Last week, the President of the United States gave his annual address to the nation, a tradition that's been going on since the very beginning of our founding fathers in our time. Although it might be interesting to note that only the first couple presidents actually gave an oral address, starting with Thomas Jefferson. The State of the Union address was always submitted in writing, and then with Woodrow Wilson being elected on the eve of World War I, that's when the tradition of talking in front of all of Congress and the people, once the advent of radio and television and so forth started, became popular. It's the one time a year the president, as we mentioned, addresses the entire nation, including Congress, the Supreme Court, the entire legislative body, and you and I. And what we heard out of President Barack Obama last week in his State of the Union address was that the state of our nation is still strong. I think many of us believe that. Although we've had some lumps in the last few years, our country is still one of the strongest and greatest places on the planet, and both to have your dreams come true and to enjoy the freedom and prosperity that many of us do. I have no doubt about that. And the president said that was really due to the core people of the United States of America for allowing those freedoms to exist. The president then went on with a litany of things he would like to see happen in the next coming year, calling it a year for change in the country. Well, I think the president, and realistically you and I, probably need to dial back any thoughts of real change and progress. When you really look through the entire hour-long speech and listen to it, you realize the president doesn't really stress any real radical changes. In fact, many of the same themes from the 2013 State of the Union address were rehashed again in 2014, which lets you know that they weren't acted on in 2013. In an election year like 2014, it's hard for me to see that either the House of Representatives nor the ambitious Senate is going to really throw anything together that they think could rock the boat and possibly jeopardize their seats, especially in what's anticipated to be a very hotly contested year politically. But what are some of those themes that were rehashed? Of course, immigration reform, we might hear that again this year. The minimum wage talk, which the president did increase for federal workers, but that will have a very minimal impact. A handful of people, a few thousand people in the country will actually be affected by that new minimum wage. Also, there is a handful of other issues as well, women's rights issues, the same type of themes that you hear brought up again and again. But I think what's most important to take away from the President of the United States speech was really an idea that I don't think has gotten a lot of attention yet today. And he mentioned about saving for retirement. And this is actually the start of personal accountability, something traditionally I don't think the president's been a real advocate for. He basically lets the federal government take on your responsibilities for you. But he suggested something called the MyRA, which would be a federal program to actually help people save their own money for retirement one day. It's a novel concept. It's one that I haven't really heard before. It gives people another option to save for retirement. After all, people in retirement not having much money or enough money is a huge strain in our system and has been for a lot of our social programs. It's a step in the right direction. I think there was a lot of talk, a lot of talking around, a lot of things that probably won't happen, but that's one thing that I think is interesting. But what's most important to note is whether or not Congress can work together in the upcoming year, because the theme for 2013 was they really couldn't.